So, toward the end of this week's Torah portion, we find a couple of verses that have and are some of the most known verses from the Torah in our Judeo-Christian world. And they say, and I quote, "If anyone maims his fellow, as he has done, so shall it be done to him. Fracture for fracture, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth." Rarely in all of Torah have any verses been more misconstrued than these exact verses. The way it is interpreted has led us to infer, to see these words as the cruel embodiment of heartless vengeance, of abject bloodthirstiness, and of unspeakable violence. And all of those qualities have been gleefully laid at the feet of the Jew by all the anti-Semites over many generations. The law of lex talionis, the law of retaliation, has been mistakenly connected to these verses, and have led the foundation of what we have come to know as retributive or punitive justice. Now, this principle, believe me, alive and well today, has infused our consciousness far beyond the walls of the justice system. It is to be found really anywhere we look. It is part of the bullying in our schools. It is part of the way people relate to each other in the workforce or on the roads, in our highways. But it is also what we see and hear day in and day out through all the media outlets that we are connecting with. This sense of everything has to be tit for tat. That if you attack me, then I will attack you right back. That if you bring up this law and this challenge, I will bring up that law and that challenge. It feels that everything around us, the world around us, is telling us that the way we are to behave with each other is a tooth for a tooth and an eye for an eye. Debates of ideas and ideals have left us for good, are all but extinct. All that we are left with are entrenched opinions that are so disconnected one from the other. There's such a wide gap between the aisles that it almost feels like we no longer live in the same world, that we no longer inhabit the same planet, that each of us live in our own constructed mythology, and we are on an ongoing basis at war with each other. We are taught, and it is reinforced every day through our news, to hate one another, to reject one another. Everything is couched in this an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth version of life. But that's not what the Torah meant whatsoever. See, the law spoke indeed of a way, a means to evaluate the value of damages suffered from one another. They were meant to look and take a step back and see, in the context of the event that took place, how can we evaluate the true damage to a person or persons and respond in a way that would be holistic, in a way that would be embracing, in a way that would be just and fair. That was what this law was meant to do. Now, it might be a little opaque right now. Let me give you an example of what the rabbis are talking about. The principle behind the sentence, behind the law, a tooth for a tooth, an eye for an eye, was to evaluate and take into account what would be the appropriate financial compensation for the damage that a person incurred. So, for example, if you suffered the loss of an eye, and you are, let's say, a surgeon, a brain surgeon, or a watchmaker, then for you, the value of that eye will be higher, say, and therefore the compensation towards the loss of your eye will also be higher than, say, a glass blower, however famous he might be. If you suffered the loss of a tooth, then the value of that tooth, and therefore the compensation due to you, if you are a toothpaste model, would be higher than if you are a professional tennis player. Do you see what the rabbis were getting at? Do you see what they meant? Do you see what they read into the verses of the Torah? The verses were meant to actually bring wholeness, to make things whole between different parties. They were meant to bestow acceptable and necessary compensation to the people who were hurt and wounded in whatever way. Their aim was not towards punitive justice, but towards restorative justice. Their aim was that the parties would come to a place of forgiveness, that the parties would come to a place of healing, that there will be fair compensation, but that will also be rehabilitation, the possibility of rehabilitation. Because what they were concerned about, what their aim was the ongoing and continuous shalom bayit, that the community may stay one and whole. That was their concern. And so these laws were enshrined in our tradition as a modality for compassion, for clemency, for understanding. And that became the Jewish constitution. Now, the question we have to ask ourselves today is, who is benefiting from keeping the misunderstanding of that sentence alive and well in our society today? Who is benefiting from continuously pitting us one against each other? Who is to benefit from creating this illusion and perpetuating this illusion that in this world, this is me versus you. And that if you hurt me, then I will do exactly the same to you. Who is benefiting from the fact that we are taught and we are told that at any given time we are to choose a camp? That we are to declare and name the enemy. That in fact, polarization is unavoidable. And that question that we are to ask ourselves is absolutely relevant to what is going on in our world and in our life today. Because, the fact is that this push towards polarization is very attractive to us. It's very attractive to us. There's something within each and every one of us that yearns to belong, to be accepted as part of a group, to know that we are with the good guys and we are fighting the bad guys. And that yearning within us is what is being manipulated in order to keep ourselves separate from each other and seeing our fellow Americans, our neighbors, as the enemy. And you know the saying, divide and conquer. Divide and conquer. Because how can we build a broad and wide movement that would change this system that is hurting us, that is hurting our children, that is destroying the possibility of us having any future? If we're constantly pushed to be hating each other, how will we ever able to build such a coalition? How can we get enough of the numbers we need to stand and work towards transforming this oppressive, manipulative, destructive power structure, while it is in the meantime pitting us against each other, defining each other as the enemy, and perpetually putting us in a state of war with each other. Oftentimes for made-up issues, for manipulated concepts that are there to entice us, to bait us into feeling this self-righteousness and hate the other side. And I could name 1,000 examples. And this is right now happening this week under our nose, with the absolutely manufactured issue of whether or not we're going to go to war with Iran. That didn't exist 2 weeks ago. But it was built up and created and manufactured in front of our eyes. So now all the news media are revolving around, will we or will we not go to war with Iran? And what did the president tweet? And what did Nancy Pelosi said? And what did so-and-so said? And what are the Democrats saying versus the Republicans saying? And here we go again, another round of we hate you. Another round of distraction while the planet is burning, and while 1 million of Muslims are interned in concentration and labor camps in China, and nobody says anything. Because we are hypnotized and mesmerized by the cycle of of bait and enticement towards being so busy hating each other that we can't do anything because our energies are wasted in that ongoing hatred, and we can't take a stand for what truly matters. So I'm asking, who is benefiting from taking that verse and repeating it to us? A tooth for a tooth, an eye for an eye, hate one another. Make sure nobody gets away with anything. We are to break free from the polarization circus. We are to break free from this hypnotizing media conglomerate that wants us so much to care about whatever is being tweeted today. That want us so much to care about what's going on in the palaces and the houses of power and wealth. And let's be clear. We no longer have a say or belong in that story. That train has left the station a long time ago. We have no power and no say, and in fact, no stake in propping up this lie of a society that is there to make sure that the wealthy are wealthier and that the corporation can do to the planet and to us whatever they want, because maybe we will be one of them someday. This is a myth that has died. And yet we, in every day of our life, are still working to keeping the lie alive. And so we are to break free from that myth of this civilization that for 300 years and up until now told us that there should be a few wealthy that would direct everything, and we should just be quiet and get along because, you know what, we can get the next iPhone and be happy. Our life is better this way. And forget about all the ills of the rest of the world as long as you are comfortable. And that myth is collapsing all around us. It is collapsing all around us because it is not sustainable. Because it is leading us at great speed towards the cliff of the end of our civilization and the end of our world. That myth has collapsed. It's like we are still in Egypt, and we're seeing all the plagues around us because they are right here in our face. And we are looking at each other and say, you know what? This is not sustainable anymore. We have to get out of here. And we have to get out of here. We have to break free from this nightmare. We have to move out of here. And that's what is happening actually to you and me right now. You know, when you feel that sense of helplessness sometimes, you feel that malaise. It's like you're not sure of anything. It's because the story in which we used to be living, that story is now completely collapsing underneath our feet. And so we feel out of source. We feel that we don't know where to stand, on what ground. It's all fluctuating. It's all going like Moses in a handbasket. I'm trying to make Exodus analogies here, but we're in Leviticus, so it's a little bit more challenging. But the collapse of our Mitzrayim, the collapse of our civilization is pushing us out, and we are now entering into the wilderness, you know, this liminal place that is pregnant of amazing discoveries and also of terrible disasters depending on how we go. Because when we human beings lose our ground and we no longer are able to follow a known story, this is the time that is most preferred by any leader of sect or by any radical extremist group. because this is the fertile ground in which they can step in and tell those who are wondering what's going on in their life to come over, because we have answers, we have another myth, we have another story, and you can be part of it. And that's why we're seeing all around the world the rise of extremism in all shapes and form. But this liminal place is also a place of great beauty. Stepping into the unknown, the not knowing, is spiritually a place of self-discovery, a place of possibilities, a place of dreaming what can be tomorrow. And this is the place we are entering right now. And this is the place each and every one of us is invited to participate. How can we dream the next phase of human life on this planet? What would it look like? What would we want it to be? And I'm seeing a few youngsters here tonight. This is also your dream. And I suspect that we are on the cusp, because we're in that place of not knowing, that we are on the cusp of a leap in consciousness. We're on the cusp of a leap in consciousness that would start to redefine how we perceive each other and the world, and see, as Thich Nhat Hanh once and often said, because that was part of his philosophy, the interbeingness of all species, of all life, of all creation. That we are, in fact, as the mystic have been saying for thousands of years, one. And I think that is what is evolving right now. But right now means really right now. We have to start letting go of that old story. It's still there, so it's hard to call it old, because we're still a part of it. We're still extricating ourselves from it because it's falling apart all around us. But now is a time for you, and I mean you, to start speaking a different way of being human on this planet. To start manifesting in your conversations with whomever you talk what it looks like the world after. So we have to start manifesting through our words and our consciousness what this world after looks like. And that's what we as a community are invited to do. That's what we've been doing since Alef was created 26 years ago. But now there are more ears that are ready to hear. So jump in now. Now we need you. Now we need this.